Let's shift gears a little bit. Is there a relationship then among the concepts of limited government, checks and balances, and loyal opposition?
Well, with loyal opposition, as we stated in our speech, it's one of the key components of loyal opposition is to promote debate and deliberation. And this in itself could be a check on government. For instance, if there's a faction within Congress that believes that a certain legislation should not be passed, they can continue to debate and possibly even filibuster to promote debate and eventually maybe even stop the bill.
I think that particularly when there is a divided government, loyal opposition does play a role in limiting the government powers, whether it's Congress checking the executive or vice versa.
Is loyal opposition only applicable to those who elected officials then? Is that what you're suggesting?
I personally believe that loyal opposition extends to the people as well, because now in this increasing technological age, people have access to all kinds of different technologies and also have the records of Congress, of Senate, and the House on the internet, so they're able to blog and use other media sources to promote their opposition to certain policies.
I think my colleague has a valid point, but personally I would see that loyal opposition belongs only to elected representatives because they are indirectly representing the people, but they have the most direct effect on legislation, on the processes of government, and so they are the ones who have the physical ability to slow down, to delay, to affect real change.
Well, put the Tea Party then in the context of your discussion.
Well, the Tea Party, in my point of view, is very good in terms of loyal opposition because they bring up certain points about current policies in our government that a significant part of our population does not agree with. Though they might not have elected officials in Congress yet, they obviously are using media outlets like CNN and Fox, etc., to voice their opinions and let other politicians know that they are a considerable bloc to be reckoned with.
And while the majority of the Tea Party, I would say, is acting as loyal opposition in order to voice what they see as very real concerns about the way government's going, we have to look at individuals from the Tea Party and various other organizations on the right and on the left that advocate violence towards specific individuals. This is disloyal opposition, clearly, because it is threatening the framework upon which our country and our political system is founded upon.
Well, it seemed to me in your presentation we kind of slid at one point from loyal opposition to constructive opposition. Are those synonymous?
I think they're definitely related. I don't know if they're synonymous. Loyal opposition sort of talks about how someone can responsibly disagree, whereas constructive opposition tends to offer an alternative viewpoint. While if it's not constructive opposition, it does not mean that it is not loyal opposition as well, but they tend to go hand in hand.
I think that constructive opposition can also be compared to bipartisanship. I think constructive opposition would be working with the other party to try to make compromises and really promote legislation.
We saw this recently with Obama's health care bill, how he brought members from both parties into a roundtable discussion to try to figure out and reconcile differences in their two different bills and different ideologies.
In your opening presentation, you talked about the filibustering of judicial nominees and as a tactic that's been complained about by both sides. If you were senators, what would you articulate as legitimate principles upon which a presidential nominee could be opposed by senators?
I think the legitimate use of a filibuster on presidential nominees would have to do with background checks, with the idea of whether or not a judge was corrupt, not a judge's political leaning. Certainly you can take that in consideration if you think that perhaps a judge's political leanings are so great that they are corrupt, but beyond that, we should be looking at the merit and the work and the value of the judge from their resume.
I would agree with my colleague that that loyal opposition should focus more on a judge's background and whether or not they're actually going to make, I guess, decisions that fall with the Constitution and justice. I think that in recent years, however, judicial nominees have been more politically motivated, particularly because with substantive due process you have political issues such as abortion or gay marriage, and I think that that has led to loyal opposition that is not using the filibuster appropriately.
But why isn't that merit? I mean, you use the word merit there. Why is it inappropriate to say that we want to take into account the ideological leanings of someone who may have gone to a good law school?
Well, I think you make a valid point that sometimes it's very hazy and hard to figure out. But at the same time, this kind of points back toward what we said in our speech, where loyal opposition wants to respect the rules that they want to have the other side, sort of like the golden rule, do unto others as you'd have do unto you. So while if you want to filibuster because of ideological purposes, and you have to be fully prepared for the other party to do that and use those same actions against you later on.
And we also generally filibuster on purely ideological purposes will slow down, obviously, the process, and that becomes frustrating if you enter into gridlock or deadlock, which is certainly not something that we want to encourage.
Well, what would be the test then from to distinguish between loyal opposition and obstructionism?
That is a $64,000 question. We are not sure because frankly, as a political rule, people do not want to question others' motives for certain opposition, because once you get into the issue of motives, once one person questions another's motives, he's going to question your motives right back at you. So it makes the issue of politics very messy.
But is there a more objective test that could be made?
One way we can evaluate this is by looking at legislative records. We can go back to see how has this person evolved over time. Was there new information that came up to make them change their mind? Did they have a new experience that would make them evolve from saying supporting of judicial filibuster to being completely against it?
Outside the context of judicial filibuster or filibuster generally, how do you?
That can apply to a person's sort of political career. We can even look at George Wallace, for example, as maybe an example of disloyal opposition, that he began his career certainly as a product of the segregated South, but not necessarily, his whole platform wasn't built on segregation, but as he advanced with his political career, we saw him become more and more a racist and more in favor of segregation with the shifting political whims of the country, and then we saw him repent towards the end, showing that maybe he's using this platform simply as a political tool.